This is a meeting of the Tinton Falls Borough Council being held July 13th, 2021. This meeting is hereby called to order. Would the clerk please read the open public meeting statement?
Pursuant to Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting on the bulletin board at Borough Hall and by notification to the Asbury Park Press, the Newark Star Ledger, and the Coaster at least 48 hours prior to the meeting.
Thank you. May I ask the clerk to call the roll, please?
Mrs. Clay?
Here.
Mr. Mancinelli?
Here.
Mr. Nessie?
Here.
Mr. Siebert?
Here.
Ms. Buckley?
Here. At this time, I'd like to invite everyone to join me in a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I just want to make an announcement this morning, welcoming everybody back in person. Just to let everybody know who's been at previous meetings, there are 2 cameras here. All this meeting is being live streamed on our new YouTube channel. It's available for live stream, and then it'll be available on the same where you see meeting documents page right after the meeting. It will be posted there as well, and then it'll remain there. So any future meetings, you'll go back to see video here. There's also a camera up there, just so everyone knows that it's being recorded, video and audio. Approval of minutes. There was 1 set of meeting minutes for approval. May I have a motion to approve the April 6th, 2021 regular meeting minutes?
Motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Clay?
Yes.
Mr. Mancinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Nessie?
Yes.
Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Ms. Buckley?
Yes. Reports. We're going to start off the reports with a public hearing on the Community Development Block Grant application. I'd like to turn the floor over to our Borough Engineer, Tom Neff, to discuss this grant application. Mr. Neff.
Thank you, Council President. So I'll give a brief overview of the grant, what we're proposing to do, and then we can open it up for council and public discussion. So this is the CDBG public hearing. CDBG is the Community Development Block Grant. It's sponsored by HUD, Housing and Urban Development, and run through Monmouth County's Planning Office. It's a grant that is released every year. Municipalities are eligible to apply every 2 years. Any prior projects have to be fully completed. The last funding cycle that the borough received was in 2017 for the southern portion of Hope Road. So we are eligible to apply this year. The maximum amount for the grant is $200,000. It's not a matching grant like some others, so if we were to get $150,000 or potentially $200,000, we don't have to match that with anything like some of the other grants. Eligible projects must meet HUD regulations and serve an eligible population as determined by census data. ADA improvements are one example of a project that's typically allowed anywhere in the town. Other projects such as road work, sewer projects, they have to be located in what's called a DTN zone, designated target neighborhood zone of the borough. And again, that's based on census data and income data associated with that. So in Tinton Falls, those DTN zones are mostly located in the southern and southeastern portions of the borough. The maps do change every few years. That's the latest data that we have. So we're looking at the different areas, trying to come up with the best project that we feel would be the best application, the best chance of potentially getting some funds. So with the success of the Wardell Park that we've had, it's been getting a lot of attention, a lot of activity. We're thinking we want to do some sidewalk improvements in that area. So we'll be looking to do curb, sidewalk, and drainage improvements on Wardell Road. Right now, there's some sidewalk on Wardell from Appaloosa Run south, and it's on the other side of the road from the park. So we would do a crossing at the park. We'd probably do what's called the rectangular rapid flashing beacons, where it's the flashing lights and the signs and the crosswalk at the park. We'd run sidewalk into the park over towards the playground. There's already an old construction access that's cut through there. So we'd do sidewalk into the playground. And then we continue the sidewalk from Appaloosa Run north to Maywood Run. And then that will give access from Maywood and Appaloosa to all of the Fox Chase development and neighborhoods over there. So by putting in the sidewalk, we have to add curb. Because we're adding curb, we have to do some drainage improvements as well. If you drive down that area, you'll see there's two big ponding areas anyway. There's two big areas that are always holding water. So we fix those issues, connect it to an existing drainage system. So that's the project we're proposing. Again, it would provide ADA accessible sidewalk route from the Fox Chase neighborhoods to the park. We would still have to finalize the construction cost estimate, but rough numbers that we're looking at would be around the $200,000 for this project. So that's the project we're proposing. The application is due Friday, July 23rd. We then have to do a presentation to the CDBG committee at the county, which consists of representatives from each municipality. We do a presentation of the project, and then hopefully by the end of the year, we would hear if we are awarded a grant or not. So at this point, if there's any questions from council, I'd be happy to answer. And once that's completed, Council President, you could open it up to the public for any other comments.
So we would apply for the full $200,000 then?
We'd have to see exactly where it ends up. If it ended up being $190,000, we would apply for that. Typically, most towns don't get the 200. This grant, to begin with, it is competitive. Some of the other grants like DOT are, we'll say, a little easier to get. This one we have applied for in the past and haven't gotten it. For other projects, we think this is a good one, but the people who vote on this are the other towns. Actually, it's the representative from other towns. It's not a county committee or anyone like that. So we would end up submitting for whatever the actual dollar amount is, but like I said, very rarely have I seen anyone actually get the full 200,000.
Okay.
What's the projection on having the restrooms installed at Wardell Park?
So that one, there's another grant, Monmouth County Municipal Open Space Grant Program. I think those applications are due middle or end of September, and we've had very good success with that grant program that's run through the county again. We got $200,000 for the park that we built, and we've had over at Liberty Park, we just got some grant funding, so we're looking to apply for the restroom building and the utility extensions for that grant, because there's no water or sewer in Wardell Road. That's why we weren't able to do it initially.
So at this point, it seems like it's far away, though, having
We
the
would
restroom.
apply for it this year, and then it would probably take a year or so to get it, potentially later next year.
Okay,
So for now, it's the Porta Johns, but
okay.
it's in the plan.
Does any other council member have questions? Okay. I think it's a great project to apply for.
Okay.
Okay, if there's no other council questions, can I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Just a reminder that the comments for this portion of the meeting will be limited to 3 minutes and must pertain only to the topic of this particular community development grant application. Is there anyone from the public that would like to make a comment on this application? Okay. Seeing or hearing none, I would like to have a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Neff. Moving on to the rest of reports. Mr. Neff, do you have anything else from your regular?
I just wanted to mention under consent agenda, there is a resolution that would need to be adopted for this CDBG grant application. Just authorizing us to submit the grant, and then I believe the mayor and clerk to execute the agreement if we were to get funded. And there's a similar resolution on there for the NJDOT municipal aid grant application that we just submitted. That one we submitted for Gilbert Street improvements, all 3 of the Gilbert Streets, north, west, and south. The roads are in terrible condition out there. There's a lot of businesses out there. So we would look to get grant funding to repave the roads, and then also to add sidewalk on the north section of Gilbert Street North, which would connect Greenbrier Falls to the new sidewalks that we're going to be doing all along Shrewsbury Ave that we got funding for last year. So Greenbrier would be connected to everything on Shrewsbury Ave then.
Okay,
That's all I have right now.
thank you. Mr. Fallon, your report?
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you, Council President, and good evening, everyone. I'd like to report that the borough recently received our 2020 audit report from our independent auditor, Suppley, Clooney & Company. And I'm happy to report that the audit was exemplary. There were no comments and recommendations noted by the auditors, and there was also no adjustments to the borough's financial statements required by the auditors. I would certainly like to congratulate all the borough's employees on this audit. Their hard work and attention to detail is certainly evident from this report. The audit will be posted on the borough's website within the next couple of days if anyone from the public would like to review it. I know council received it a few weeks ago, and so there's also a resolution on tonight for council to certify that they've reviewed the audit, and then there'll be a group affidavit that's necessary to be signed that will be sent to the state of New Jersey. And that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fallon, and great job on the audit.
Thank you.
Mayor Perillo, do you have a report this evening?
I would just like to thank Mr. Fallon and Mr. Neff for their fine report and their fine work, and particularly on the budget. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Starkey, our Director of Law, for your report.
I don't have a formal report to make tonight. I just want to say that it's nice to be back here in person doing business. It's a pleasure to be here, and I think we can get things done a lot more efficiently now that we're all together. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Starkey. Ms. Sessler?
I have no report, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll move on to council reports, and we'll start with Mrs. Clay.
Yes, thank you, Council President. I would like to echo Mr. Starkey's comment that it's wonderful to actually be here in person and be able to see everyone. Also, I wanted to give an update, save the date on Community Day, which is scheduled for October 10th from 1 to 5. Also, in addition, we are going to be doing a 5K run. Well, I'm not, but others will. And it starts at 11 a.m. And it's exciting that we're able to bring Community Day back, because last year, as you know, we weren't able to have it. And also in the afternoon, we'll have a lot of activities for kids and families. So I'm certain that we'll see all of you there. And that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Clay. Mr. Manginelli, for your report.
Yeah, I attended a Historic Preservation Committee meeting last night. They had a very successful Juneteenth, and they're planning other events. It's really a great place to go visit, that Crawford House. They've got a great visual going, thanks to Danny and his technical people. It's really a very interesting place, and I suggest everybody to take a visit. That's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manginelli. Mr. Nessie, for your report.
Thank you, Council President, and good evening, everybody. For the planning board, last planning board meeting, the board members approved of a minor subdivision along Tinton Avenue, increasing one property size while decreasing the adjacents. The next planning board meeting that was scheduled for tomorrow has been canceled. Moving on. I was not able to attend the Soldier on Tour, which is a facility in Tinton Falls housing homeless vets in Monmouth County, but I spoke to the director and will be visiting in the near future. I think Soldier On is a fantastic organization that I reached out to them 5 years ago about participating in being a volunteer, offering barbering services. I'm a barber, and offering barbering services to the facility. Since then, I spoke to the director, Casey, and hopefully get something going when they open up. Last council meeting, we had a workshop discussing backyard chickens. Since then, the council has created a foundation draft ordinance mirroring surrounding towns, and the council has collaborated and built to create a stronger ordinance, best fit for Tinton Falls, and I think the ordinance should be ready for introduction, hopefully by next meeting.
I want to say thank you to all those involved in the creation of the Wardell Park, especially Mr. Neff. The park looks magazine quality, and it's absolutely wonderful. I wasn't there for the ribbon cutting ceremony, but when I brought my family by later that week, it looks great. It came out wonderful. And also like to recognize Mr. Rowanoff and the IT department for setting up the borough's YouTube channel. I think there's a step in the right direction to allow more residents in town the opportunity to attend council meetings while being home. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Nessie. Mr. Siebert.
The Tinton Falls Library Association will be having a music fest on August 14th. The tickets are available online on the Tinton Falls Library website. It will be from 12 to 8, and we'll have bands, games, a beer garden for those who want to indulge. The Wardell Park came out very nice. It was nice. The ribbon cutting ceremony was very nice. I learned how to play pickleball for the first time. It is very nice to be back here in person and see everyone. And that's all.
Great, thank you, Mr. Siebert. My report, I just want to commend Mr. Fallon and all the department heads on the great job on the audit report, as well as Mr. Romanoff for setting up the YouTube channel and for enabling this access. I've been looking forward to this for a long time, so now anybody can view who can't come to the meetings, audio and visual at any time without having to make an OPA request, which should make things a little bit easier on our clerk's office as well, so appreciate that. I was able to attend the Wardell Park opening as well on a very, very hot day. It was like 95 degrees, but it was a fantastic turnout, particularly considering that. And just it's magazine quality is a great way to describe that. The park looks absolutely beautiful, so I appreciate that. Soldier On, I'm just going to tack on to that. Soldier On, I was able to attend that facility tour. It was extremely impressive. They've thought of every possible detail. There's pictures and posters up on their Facebook page. I also just wanted to promote, they have an Amazon wish list for anyone in town that wants to donate. They're providing furnished apartments, so every week they have like a special, we need 70 of kitchen utensils, whatever the item may be for the week. So anybody can go on there and purchase items for that wish list, which will be placed in each one of the apartments that will be built there. And finally, the next Environmental Commission meeting is July 22nd at 7:30 p.m. I think it will be at the Crawford House in person, so everyone is welcome to attend. And that's all for my report this evening. Moving on to ordinances, there are no ordinances for introduction, but we have 5 ordinances for final consideration. We'll hold a public hearing on each ordinance, with comments being limited to 3 minutes. Comments may only pertain to the ordinance in question at the time. May I ask the clerk to read the title of the first ordinance, please?
Ordinance 2021-1473, an ordinance amending Section 7-4 of the Borough Code to prohibit parking on a portion of Drift Road.
May I have a motion to open the public discussion on this ordinance?
Motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Clay. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Manginelli. All in favor?
Aye.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to make a comment? Please remember to state your name and address for the record. Okay. Seeing none, may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Siebert. May I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Mr. Manginelli. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any council members that would like to comment on this ordinance?
Yeah.
Mr. Siebert.
In driving past the Capelli Fields, I completely understand the purpose of this ordinance, because there's a lot of commercial vehicles that use that to access the businesses in that area. But there's a major parking problem with Capelli Fields that needs to be addressed, because they were parking on Earl property, they were parking on Drift Road. So I think that also needs to be addressed on top of this ordinance going forward.
If you want me to provide some input on that, yeah, I have been speaking with the police department. They reached out to me just to discuss this, and that was the reason behind this ordinance, because cars for Capelli were parking on there, as a shortcut and then just walking right down the hill to the backfields, as well as parking in some other areas. So we did reach out to one of the representatives from Capelli. Actually, just this morning, we sent them a rather lengthy email indicating that, this ordinance was on for adoption tonight. They need to make sure they put the message out to all the users of their fields that there's no parking on Drift Road, there's no parking on Wayside Road, there's no parking anywhere that's not a designated spot. They are going to be ticketed soon. Also, we discussed the fact that people were crossing the road where outside of the crosswalk. I think part of that has to do with the fact that the site's not finished yet. I think once the new building goes up and the other fields, there's going to be more parking across from there, and it's going to look like a true walkway. Right now, it kind of goes to nowhere, so people aren't using it. So once the rest of the site is developed, it'll make much more sense to use that crosswalk. But they were put on notice. We did get a response back that they would enforce that on their end, as well as hire additional staff if necessary during the larger events.
Thank you, Mr. Neff.
All right, there's no further council comments. May I have a motion for adoption?
Motion.
Thanks, Mr. Nessie. May I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Mr. Siebert. May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Clay?
Yes.
Mr. Mancinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Nessie?
Yes.
Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Ms. Buckley?
Yes. Moving on, may I ask the clerk to read the title of the next ordinance?
Ordinance 2021-1474, an ordinance prohibiting the operation of any class of cannabis business within the jurisdiction of the Borough of Tinton Falls until adequate regulatory guidance is provided by the state's Cannabis Regulatory Commission.
Thank you. Before we move on to public comment, I'd like our Director of Law to make a statement on behalf of council before opening the public comment.
Yes, thank you, Council President. I'd like to make this statement on behalf of the council regarding this ordinance. This ordinance is commonly known as a cannabis opt-out ordinance. And the purpose behind it is really driven by state law, which says that if a town does not take action to opt out by August 21st, then the cannabis business will be automatically allowed in the town. So that's why you see one of the reasons you see a lot of towns adopting an opt-out ordinance. But the adoption here, if this ordinance is adopted, it is not because the Borough Council is opposed to cannabis, or that does not mean that the council will not consider allowing cannabis establishments to locate within the borough as we move forward. What needs to happen is there's going to be a Cannabis Regulatory Commission set up by the state, and they are going to promulgate final regulations. It's uncertain when that's going to happen, but it is not going to happen by August 21st. But when that happens, that will give needed guidance to towns. In the interim, what the council here intends to do is undertake a detailed review and likely to begin drafting an opt-in zoning ordinance to allow some businesses in some parts of town. But the review that will be undertaken will involve an analysis of the different types of businesses and licenses that would be allowed and their suitability within the different districts in town, and perhaps any conditions the borough may require. This review will include input from the planning board, as well as borough staff members and professionals, so that this time will be used productively. And I note also that there is a resolution on the agenda tonight to create a cannabis subcommittee here that'll consist of 2 council members and professionals here in town to undertake that review. The ordinance, in the meantime, is the opt-out ordinance that we have has been recommended or has been drafted by the New Jersey League of Municipalities. That is an organization in the state that supports this approach, has prepared this ordinance for all New Jersey municipalities to consider because of this short timeline the state has set for decision-making on this. And that's what this ordinance is based on. So I just wanted to give a summary of where things are before the council considers the approval of this ordinance. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Starkey. May I have a motion to open the public discussion for this ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, second, Mr. Manginelli, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this particular ordinance? Please remember to state your name and address for the record. Yep, go ahead.
Jay Goldberg, 90 Glenwood Drive, Tinton Falls, New Jersey. I just wanted, that was great, by the way. So what you're saying is this ordinance is just about opting out, but doesn't preclude us, or doesn't give any other rules or regulations about adopting this type of business if it was necessary for the town?
That's right. The way it works is you have to opt out by August 21st.
Right.
If you don't, you're automatically in.
Right.
On the other hand,
This gives us the right to
if you opt out
decide what we
now,
want to do.
you can opt in
Right.
at any date in the future.
Right.
But if you don't take this action, you can't opt out after
Right.
August 21st.
Right. Just want to make that clear.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure.
Craig Gately, 10 Polo Club Drive.
And Mr. Yeager.
If we took no action, we were basically automatically opt in to allow the business in industrial and retail zoning locations. That's correct, right?
Yeah, I'm going to, now you get the details, I'm going to turn it over to.
Yeah, if you, it's not only that, it also locks you in for 5 years if you don't take any action, so.
And you make no tax.
It allows, yeah, and so exactly, so there's a couple components to it, so it would allow it in basically all commercial zones in any license class, so you're basically relinquishing your zoning rights of the municipality, and you're also locking yourself into that for a 5-year period, and then it also affects your ability to tax locally those establishments.
So when you say tax, it's about that 2% excise tax that municipalities can add on?
Correct, the local tax, yes.
So that tax, if you opt in, you have to make a decision immediately on the tax, or that can't be done down the line?
No, it can be done down the line. If you opted in now, you could do that simultaneously, but if the borough decides to opt in later when there's guidance from the state, then that tax can be implemented if the borough wishes to do so.
Okay. I just see, voting yes for this legislation, I think you're going against the wishes of the constituents. The constituents at Tinton Falls voted, I think, about 67% in support of legal marijuana. I think it's an anti-business approach. I think you're going to miss out on the business, miss out on the tax opportunity, because the businesses are going to go elsewhere. You can spin it however you want and try to say, oh, we're just doing this right now, and down the line maybe we'll open the town for that business. I think we're going to miss out, and I feel like it's just the same old story from elected officials the past 40 years in America's war on drugs. It's just more of the same. I just think you should vote no and allow the business in town, allow freedom, and have the potential for the tax revenue that could come from it. That's what I'll have to say on it. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Gately. Any other comments?
Good evening, Jeffrey King, 24 Elizabeth Parkway, Eatontown, 07724. I'm a property owner here, though. So, yeah, I think that the subcommittee is a great idea, but it's a little late. I think we should have been more proactive on this. I agree with the gentleman before me. This is a good opportunity, and being the slow bird, you could very well miss this worm. It's jobs, good paying, high-skilled jobs. Universities are offering majors with scholarships because this is people that are in botany and chemistry working in this field, making 6 figures easily running these operations. We have plenty of zones for it. I could see this happening in almost any of the zones where we have commerce now. Fort Monmouth, absolutely, but we have the empty Sonic and A&P down there. That's blighted. I'd like to see something go there. It's just wasting away now. We have the Reclamation Center anywhere on Shafto, anywhere be fine. If we were going to have a motocross and a concrete plant, asphalt plants, we can do a warehouse, grow place. I don't know why we haven't thought of that before or talked about it before. It kind of strikes me. We have a brewery in town in a strip mall, so I don't want to hear that we can't have it in a strip mall. We can definitely do that. Consumption lounge in any strip mall, apparently. There's plenty of alcohol, and I think we just do what the state wants with alcohol, right? We don't get to call the shots. We do what the state wants. It's not the craziest idea to do what the state wants with cannabis. They're not going to put it next to a school. Obviously, we know this. But I appreciate that we're going to have a discussion with the subcommittee. It's good. I don't hear that the public was going to be included. I don't know if it'll be open to public listening to the discussions. I think that's fitting and proper, though, if we're going to be putting the resources into it of the community. Yeah, I heard about a beer garden now, and I'm waiting to hear about the cannabis garden. Why can't we do that in public with mixed ages the way we've always done with alcohol? It's a double standard. There's a stigma on cannabis, and this doesn't really help forward the turning the page on ending the war on drugs, starting a drug peace. We did vote for this, clearly. We affirmed it without a doubt, and homegrowing wasn't included. How ridiculous is that? We're going to cater to the lobbyists and the corporate multi-state operators, the rich people, and the local people. Someone that we grew up and went to school with should run a dispensary here. A person of color, minority people should have a good opportunity here in the community. We don't want corporate Amazon cannabis. We want organic, locally grown craft cannabis in our community. That would be an asset here. And I don't see you guys steering us in that direction. So I just needed to have an opportunity to say that this is what I would envision for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Liss. So I do just want to say, if people weren't here for the previous two meetings, we did actually have two public hearings on this, each of which was approximately an hour and a half long. There were various proposals put forth. Unfortunately, we couldn't agree on those proposals, and we had more questions than we had answers. So we've submitted a list of 26 questions. Feel free to email me, and I will send them to you, that I submitted to the Cannabis Regulatory Commission, which was what all council members asked. We just documented it all. There are certain things like micro-business licenses. We had to determine, get guidance from the Cannabis Regulatory Commission, whether those are going to be individual licenses versus regular licenses, how to classify them, whether they'd be considered in one license class, and that will affect the number of licenses we want to allow. Obviously, the zoning, which everyone's aware of. We also want to embed the 2%, 2%, 1%, 2% tax on each one of those businesses. So when we say we're opting out, all of us here on council, in the which you can hear in the previous sessions, want to have cannabis businesses in town. It's the details, and the devil's in the details. We need to work out all those details before we can put the zoning ordinance in place. Because once you put the zoning ordinance in place, then you can't renege on that. So if we didn't make the right decisions and take a careful review to put that in the ordinance, then we're going to be locked into that for 5 years. So there's also things like odor control, safety plans. All those things need to be in the zoning ordinance. So it's a pretty detailed ordinance, which we would have had to, just because of the August 21st deadline, we would have had to be approving that today. So unfortunately, we just couldn't get there in a month and a half, primarily because the Cannabis Regulatory Commission has, I believe, until the end of August to promulgate their regulations. When the state passed this overall regulations, they said municipalities had till the end of 2021, which would have given us a certain amount of months after the Cannabis Regulatory Commission promulgated their rules, then we probably wouldn't need this opt-out. We would just have the opt-in by the end of the year. And we committed to that in a subcommittee. We did that specifically so the public could see that we are going to work on it, and we have a report out from that subcommittee on November 15th at the latest. So the whole idea is that we're drafting this but we need to give ourselves more time to do it correctly. So I do just want to say we all are supportive of cannabis businesses, and if you don't believe us because we're elected officials, that's totally your right. But I do welcome you, if you weren't able to attend, to go back and listen to those workshops, because we spent a great deal of detail going into all of those, and that's really why we're doing this, because there's a lot of details and we want to consider it the right way. So, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Denise Catalano, 11 Alpine Trail. I just want to make two quick clarifications from what I understand. Number one, when we as voters had a chance to vote, we were voting on the legalization of marijuana, not whether we were going to have marijuana facilities in our own town, correct?
Correct.
Okay. The other clarification, which I think has been said, is this is a stopgap, ordinance that is necessary because the state hasn't defined how they want all of this to work yet. So rather than risk saying, okay, we're not going to opt out, we're going to just do nothing and then be held to something that we may not want for 5 years, we're saying we're going to opt out and we'll make the decision once the state decides what they want to do, how they want to do it, and then evaluate what's the impact on us, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's all the only clarification I want to make. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public?
Craig Gately again, 10 Polo Club Drive. If you do nothing, though, you can do everything you said you want to do down the line still. If we opt in by doing nothing, you can still do everything you want to do. And I listened to the call a couple months ago.
No,
I think it was a great discussion until the end where we said, oh, we're going to opt out. Like, we can still do everything we want to do if we just do nothing and opt in automatically.
No, if you opt in, you've opted into what the state said, and you don't make any tax. You can't renege on that once you opt in. That's why we have to delay this. So we make sure we get everything in there that we need.
What stops, so if we do nothing by the deadline and we're automatically in, then after the fact, we cannot write our own local ordinances to establish what you
You can't
just
make it more strict
detailed?
than what the town says, and I don't believe you can make tax on it, which is kind of the whole economic benefit to having the businesses here as well. Is that
He
you're gonna
said
be getting
when I
local
got
revenue
earlier that
tax.
Tax, you could add the tax later.
If I may, Council
Sure,
President.
go ahead, Mr.
Late, what I was referring to is after the fact. So if the municipality decides to opt in after this initial opt-out, then you can add the tax later. Not if you don't, if the municipality does nothing, which isn't a viable option for some reason, the state legislature wrote this into the statute without really taking into account the period of time that I think it takes to develop appropriate regulations, and without taking into account the ability of the Cannabis Regulatory Commission to form and adopt its regulations. It's generally modeled after the ABC regulations, alcohol beverage and control, which we have a comprehensive scheme of alcohol beverage control regulations that governs the issuance of licenses, which the municipality does play a role in. So there are regulations and processes in place for that. As far as cannabis is concerned, those regulations and processes do not exist right now. So it's extraordinarily difficult for the governing body to take any actions or adopt any ordinances establishing either zoning or licensing standards without that regulatory guidance from the state of New Jersey, because they will eventually, and they're supposed to sometime later this year, come out with those regulations, and any actions we take could be preempted by those as well. And the vast majority of municipalities, but for a few exceptions, especially in this particular region, are taking the same course of action. So I think the concern about missing boat in the state is not yet issuing licenses itself. So the concerns with, and that was something that I think the governing body extensively discussed on May 18th, as well as another meeting, those concerns I think are somewhat mitigated by the fact that the state's not yet issuing those licenses. So.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Nelson. Okay. Let's see. May I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Seifert. May I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Mrs. Clay. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any council members that would like to comment on this ordinance?
Council President, I'd like to comment. I just wanted to reinforce the statement that Mr. Starkey made at the opening of this discussion. As you may have heard in previous meetings, we did go back and forth quite a bit on this topic, and there are a lot of unanswered questions, which, as Council President said, we submitted to the Cannabis Regulatory Commission. The timeline for this is fierce, and as elected officials, it was very difficult for us to make a decision without answers to those questions. But I just want to state that I believe the subcommittee will be effective. We have excellent professionals that will assist us, and I believe in this and volunteered to be on that subcommittee.
Thank you, Mrs. Clay. Okay. May I have, did you have a comment, Mr. Seifert?
Yeah, the two workshops we had were very informative, but we all came out with more questions than answers. And without knowing the direction the state is going with the licenses and the regulations that they're going to implement, it's very difficult to even begin to think of where you could allow these or where you couldn't. And while I don't necessarily disagree with it, there is a community impact that needs to be considered, and, you know, imagine if you know, we approved a liquor license, and then all of a sudden, the state came in and said, oh, they can operate 24 hours, and it's right across the street from your house. That could really have a huge impact on the community. So those type of things are what needs to be considered, and the subcommittee is the perfect venue for this and to move forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Siebert. May I have a motion for adoption?
Motion.
Second.
Thank you for the second. May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Clay?
Yes.
Mr. Mancinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Nessie?
I abstain.
Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Ms. Buckley?
Yes. Great. May I ask the clerk to read the title of the next ordinance, please?
Ordinance 2021-1475, an ordinance authorizing the purchase of property known as Block 145, Lot 29.01, 97 Shark River Road, as part of the open space program.
Thank you, and I'd like to ask Mr. Starkey has a statement to make. regarding
Yes, I
this.
just have one comment on this ordinance. On first reading, this is an ordinance authorizing the purchase of property. The property is located at 97 Shark River Road. In the first reading of this ordinance, there was a minor typo. Instead of block 145, it said block 45. That has been corrected. That is a non-material change in legal parlance, so that means that you can continue with second reading and public hearing this ordinance tonight with that change.
Thank you, Mr. Starkey. May I have a motion to open the public discussion on this ordinance?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this ordinance? Please remember to state your name and address for the record. Okay, seeing none, may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion.
Thank
Second.
you. May I have the second? Mr. Manginelli, could you just do that second again?
Second, Miss.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any council members that would like to comment on this ordinance? Great. May I have a motion for adoption?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. May I have a roll call?
Mrs. Clay?
Yes.
Mr. Mancinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Nessie?
Yes.
Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Ms. Buckley?
Yes. Thank you. May I ask the clerk to read the title of the next ordinance?
Ordinance 2021-1476, an ordinance amending Chapter 3, Article 2 of the Borough Code entitled Police Force to amend the composition of the police force.
Thank you. May I have a motion to open the public discussion on this ordinance?
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this ordinance? Please remember to state your name and address for the record. Okay. Seeing none, may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any council members that would like to comment on this ordinance? Okay. May I have a motion for adoption?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Clay?
Yes.
Mr. Mancinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Nessie?
Yes.
Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Ms. Buckley?
Yes. Thank you. And may I ask the clerk to read the title of the next ordinance?
Ordinance 2021-1477, bond ordinance providing for the borough's 2021-2022 road improvement program, appropriating $2,600,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $2,200,000 bonds and notes to finance a portion of the costs thereof, authorized in and by the Borough of Tinton Falls in the County of Monmouth, New Jersey.
Thank you. May I have a motion to open the public discussion on this ordinance?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this ordinance? Please remember to state your name and address for the record. Yes.
Jeff King, 24 Elizabeth Parkway, Eatontown. It's a lot of money, and it's all going to be paid back by taxpayers with interest, and it's easy to spend money. It's hard to actually bring money in, though, isn't it? And I can think of a really good way we could bring money in, but it's not happening for a while. And I'd rather the reverse was happening. We were saving money and making money. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any council members that would like to comment on this ordinance?
Thank you, Mr. Neff, for all the work you've done on this, and the administration.
Second. May I have a motion for adoption?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Clay?
Yes.
Mr. Mancinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Nessie?
Yes.
Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Ms. Buckley?
Yes. Thank you. Now we'll move on to the open public discussion. May I have a motion to open the public discussion?
Motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
This is the time the public may comment on any topic of their choice. Please state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Is there anyone that would like to? Okay.
Craig Gately, 10 Polo Club Drive. Last month, Councilman Nessie brought up already about the chicken ordinance and stuff, and it was a great conversation last month. I had to jump off the call before the end of it. Whatever you guys do, I think it's great to allow people to have chickens. Everyone should have chickens. I think it's great. I encourage you to make it as simple as possible. Like, I mean, I was looking at the code book, and I think the code book says, oh, you can't have poultry. I mean, even if it's as simple as changing that to poultry to roosters, you know, don't make these, minimum lot sizes. Don't make it, you have to get all sorts of permits for your chickens. Don't have to get a license for every chicken you want to have. Like, I mean, we have like this requirement to have dog licenses. Nobody gets a dog license. So just make it as simple as possible. That's what I encourage the council to do with the chickens, and let people have chickens. That's all.
Thank you.
Council President, can I address it?
Sure. Go ahead, Mr. Siebert.
That's exactly what the intention was, and in looking at some surrounding towns that made it more complicated, you had less involvement from the public with those areas. So that was one focus, was ease of access and ease of implementation. Thank you for your comments.
Does anyone else have any public comments?
Good evening, Ellen Goldberg, 90 Glenwood Drive. First of all, I would like to echo the comments of several people here tonight about Wardell Park. I was very, very impressed with how beautiful the park came out, and what a great job Mr. Fallon did. I thought that the whole ceremony was terrific, and people had a lot of fun, although it was ridiculously hot. But it was a really, really nice event, and I'm really proud of our town for this great park, and can't wait to use it with my future grandchildren. I also want to thank publicly DPW, Jill and Caitlin and Mark, who were extremely helpful when I did a program with the Environmental Commission. We had WebEx last month, and we had several people from various organizations, the New Jersey Composting Council, and someone from the New Jersey Sierra Club, and myself made presentations, and it was incredibly helpful that the DPW was so open-armed and able to help me to be able to formalize my presentation and give me all the information that I needed. So I wanted to say thank you to them. I also want to say thank you to the mayor for doing a nice job that you've been doing for the last 4 years, and thank you.
Thank you. Yes, did you have a public comment?
Hi, I'm Jerry Spunberg. I live at 11 Alpine Trail. I just want to try and get something clear to my mind. We've been living in this town, I guess, almost 30 years. And I remember way back, we had a problem. We had a deterioration of our roads and curbs and sidewalks. And there was developed a plan to start rebuilding those roads and sidewalks where needed at about 2 miles a year. And part of that plan was that we couldn't have a savings account because it wasn't allowed a put aside. Because if you put it aside, anybody that, if the council changed, and they can spend that money anyway. So the simplest thing to do was to bond it. And as we retire those bonds, we then go and release new bonds to pay for that. Is that what we're still doing?
Mr. Fallon,
Can
do you want to
anybody
comment
answer
on
that?
that?
Yeah, I can answer that. Currently, our capital program is that we authorize a road improvement program every other year, so that we can get more efficiencies in the bidding process. So basically, we do a larger program every other year instead of doing a smaller program every year. So our program for the 2021-2022 year is about $2.6 million. It's actually going to be a little bit more than that because we have funds available from previous road programs where the bids came in under what we had appropriated. So right now, the answer is that we authorize a program for road improvements every other year. And if you're talking about debt, the borough's actually retiring an average of $1 million more every year than we authorize. Our debt has, over the last 7 or 8 years, is down about $9 million, so about $1 million per year. We do not authorize debt for anything other than road improvements. All of our other capital costs are funded directly in the budget. So it's a very conservative way of providing capital improvements and infrastructure improvements to our community, much needed infrastructure improvements at a very reasonable cost. Last year, we issued notes at about 0.3%. So we're borrowing at a very low rate, and we're retiring more debt than we authorize each year.
So in reality, this is not really taxes that end up being laid upon the residents of the town. And I remember a discussion that goes back a few years ago that because of inflation and because of the low rates of borrowing, we're actually paying with less expensive dollars for work that we're getting done now. So there's almost a savings in that sometimes.
That is true. That could be the case.
Okay, thanks. I just kind of remembered all that.
Is there any other public comments?
I'll be brief.
Okay.
Jeff King, 24 Elizabeth Parkway, Eatontown. Just wanted to, a couple final thoughts here. I didn't see a carve out for medical access in your ban, so I guess you banned that as well. And that's really need to have compassion for the sick and suffering people among us. They should be put first, not last. The tax should be put towards wheelchair access and access for people with disabilities. Medical cannabis is endorsed by the AARP. They had a whole issue on that. And it's also endorsed by the American Legion, by a very large veterans group. So I'm sure that no one here is opposed to that. But I didn't hear any comments of how we would like to attract a high-quality medical cannabis facility for the people who are really sick and suffering, like Jake Honig. His town is also banning cannabis business, allegedly temporarily. And I do take your word for it that you do want to work on this. I commend you for having this date when this report will be due, because a lot of municipalities have just kicked the can down the road and left it wide open, and they're not going to work on it. So I appreciate that you're going to work on it. I do. I'm thankful for that. Hopefully we'll have some productive output from this subcommittee. I'm not sure who's going to appoint the members.
The members are appointed. It's actually in your agenda packet. You have an agenda packet.
He just has the agenda.
Just the agenda.
Oh.
No, we don't offer it to the public. It's only online.
Oh, yeah, so it's online, but it's Councilwoman Clay, Councilmember Manginelli. We have Mr. Starkey, Mr. Neff, Mr. Fallon, Sharon Brown from the Planning Board, and I'm forgetting someone.
We have also Jen Beam, she's the Borough and the Planning Board's planner, as well as Dana Webb, the zoning officer.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. That sounds like a really great brain group of minds. Sounds like you're going to be steered pretty well by that. And is this going to be open to the public, these meetings, or
I don't believe so.
minutes being available for the
Tomorrow.
public to review?
Honestly, we haven't discussed that yet.
Yeah, that's a decision. It's not legally required. That's a decision that would be made down the road by the subcommittee when it's appointed.
I really prefer transparency, and opaque, not good. So I just also wanted to say, the League of Municipalities, I feel like they really dropped the ball in steering communities down this dead-end road, and I'd like the League to come up with some legitimate advice for towns that don't want to just go ahead and ban. They have their date of August 21st for regulations to come out, so I would expect the League on the 22nd to have some substantive advice, because I think they completely failed to do their job comparing what other states have done and other communities. They didn't even offer anything, and I think that's ridiculous, that this is the advice that we have to take. Because right now, the towns that are banning, marijuana is being sold in these towns. It's being sold just like it always has. It's being sold by people who don't check ID and don't care who they're selling to, kids. It's being sold alongside of other drugs that are much more dangerous and terrible, addictive. And this is the status quo here and in all the towns that are banning. This black market is in control. The underground gangsters, whatever you want to call them, legacy market, traditional market, people who deserve to have a license in some cases, but in other cases they don't deserve it. And right now, the market here, 07724, is in their hands. So I would behoove you to come up with something good in November and implement it according to the goals of the master plan as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have one more individual.
Council President, may I take a second to respond to that?
Sure.
Mr. King, correct? I think you probably may receive a different reception at other municipalities than you have here. And if you go back and listen to the previous meetings, we've all pledged to move forward with this. If anybody's failed, it's the state of New Jersey and the CRC, because they're coming out with their regulations after the opt-in, opt-out date. That's baffling. There's no way to do business like that. They're asking you to make a decision based on regulations you don't even know. You couldn't even think of it. They could do something. Use your wildest imaginations. You don't even know.
The ultimate failure is homegrown and failed us. You should have that.
I agree with you. That's also under the Golden Dome in Trenton. Greedy politicians.
It wouldn't matter if you banned it.
But it's, I think we've made it very publicly clear that we're going to move forward in opting in once we know what the rules are. So I just think that needs to be very publicly clear and made, which we've all said that. And previous meetings, we've said it again tonight. So it's very crystal clear that Tinton Falls will move forward with opting in once the rules are clear and regulations.
Thank you, Mr. Siebert. I believe we have one more gentleman to make a public comment. Sorry about that.
It's okay. Good evening, everyone. Keith Felder, 22 Gloria Court, Tinton Falls, 07724. I do personally want to commend you all on the work over at Wardell Park. My son was raving about it emphatically, driving past there in the car, hoping it will open soon. And it opens, you put a park over after I moved from over that way. It would have been excellent when I was living over there. It's okay. I do commend the work you're about to do over this area too, which is great. I also want to speak on that the police department do that one-day camp, which is excellent, and I think that's an awesome idea going forward. Would have been great to have it going in different areas, but circumstances cause that it's only one day, and I think it's great. Going forward, I think being a part of this community for 18 years and seeing how everyone really comes together on certain things, but in more looking to get the job done and work done on a lot of stuff. I coached here recreation basketball with Sherry and underneath her leadership. And doing that work, I wanted to see a lot more done for the kids in the area. And with this happening, and I know last year with the pandemic, nothing was able to get done at all. Everything was shut down. And we were able to do something last year. Couldn't do it again this year, and that's okay. But we were able to do something last year. But having this come about for the kids, and they're ecstatic about it, and the officers knowing that they are the part of the community as well, they'll see the officers in a different light. Because most places you don't see officers going out interacting with the kids and doing those type of things and putting on something special and free for the kids to enjoy. And they can always go back and rave about it to other kids in other areas. I do other work in other areas and they don't even have the things that we're doing here. And that's a kudos to what we do. And I'm speaking with other people trying to get them to do the same thing. And they speak, when I mention what we're doing on that camp, they want to rush and get back and try to do the same thing. So we set the tone, we set the models with everything we do. Everyone will start to want to, I don't want to say copy, want to do the same thing. We set the stand, we set the pattern. So this way they'll come looking for us on how everything was done. And the kids will always go back and grow up speaking on this highly, and speaking of the officers highly too as well. And I do thank you all for that. I do the chiefs and Sergeant DeLucia for their work that they're doing with this as well. It's awesome, and I commend you all for the work that you're doing in the community. On your end, gentlemen, I do have to address this. It's patience. Patience will produce more than what you think. Just know that once this is done, it'll open doors and avenues. You can't rush it. And with the cannabis business, also you gotta understand, anyone who wants to get it, they have to get medically cleared and have a card to get anything. Just want to address that. But I do thank you all for that part, and I do thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Felder. Ms. Husser, were there any written comments submitted prior to the meeting?
No, I didn't receive any comments to be read into the record.
Great, thank you. Hearing no further comments, may I have a motion to close the public discussion?
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Miscellaneous business. Does any member of council have anything to add that they didn't during reports? Okay.
With the opening of Soldier On, or near opening of Soldier On, I think it's appropriate to recognize the gentleman in the back there, Mr. Baldwin, for all of his efforts and all his time that he put into moving that project forward when he was sitting up here with.
And he's now on the board.
Now he's on the board. Yes, thank you.
Mr. Baldwin. Before we move on to the consent agenda, are there any items any member of council would like to be removed and voted on separately? Okay. Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank
Second.
you. Thank you for the second. May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Clay?
Yes.
Mr. Mancinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Nessie?
Yes.
Mr. Siebert?
Yes.
Ms. Buckley?
Yes. Thank you. This concludes today's business. There is no executive session this evening. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you for the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
This meeting is now adjourned. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.